Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. And as you can see, we are in a hotel room and we're waiting for things to connect themselves to see if this puppy is working. We got a very pared down mobile setup today. We're just on the laptop, try to get the GoPro to connect, but your boy is technically deficient. So thank you for accommodating with the audio and the video being what it is. I'm embarrassed, but we've got a great stream plan because we got some business to catch up on today. My goodness, this Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi stuff. We posted a little bit of a video yesterday on that. I was walking and talking around the rim of the Grand Canyon because that's where we're at today. We're at the Grand Canyon. And let me show you just very briefly where we are. So that, my friends, is the Grand Canyon. And let me figure out what we're doing here. So you can see our room is right on the rim. So we walk right out there and you can just catch it. And it's gorgeous. Now there's a big fire going off in the north rim and the northern side. And that, of course, is a major bummer. But hopefully they're working on getting that puppy put out. But we've got some business to attend to today. So some Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino stuff. Now, multiple sources have been out. They're all confirming that there was a blow up, in fact. Haven't seen anything from Kash Patel or Dan Bongino yet, but we do have a bunch of different sources and different reports that have come out, and I wanted to share some of them with you today. And so let's pull it up. If you're just getting up to speed on what happened with Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, here is the latest. So a lot of this started to break from this woman, Mary Margaret Olahan, and she's over with the Daily Wire. And she wrote this article, started posting about it. And then immediately after that, we saw this tweet come out from Todd Blanche, right? So we'll come back on that one. But the original article came back down and said, Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, is now threatening to leave the bureau if Bondi remains on the job, right? So either you go or I go. The report says Bongino furious with Bondi over her handling of the Epstein files, which led many to believe he could walk away from the job that he took in February. The source close to Bongino said that he's effectively issued an ultimatum saying he won't work alongside Bondi, which is a big deal. So that would create that fork in the road moment for President Trump. Where is he going to go? Both of them are Senate confirmed. Both of them are major positions, but the Attorney General is definitely a bigger position than the Deputy Director at the FBI. So if it's like, I'm going or she's going, I think Trump, just as a matter of political order of operations almost, has to back Bondi unless he's going to have a real sea change. So they write Bongino has left a lucrative career. Yeah, he was one of the top podcasters on the planet and decided to give that up to go in and effectuate some change, which is why you can imagine he would be pretty upset if the reason for his joining the administration was to work on stuff like this, and now he can't work on stuff like this. You can imagine why that would be pretty frustrating. So she posted this yesterday, said, breaking, source close to Dan Bongino, and now this is being confirmed, tells me it's either him or Pam Bondi, and that he won't stay at the FBI if she stays at the DOJ. The rift between Bongino and Bondi intensified on Wednesday, days after the DOJ announced there was no evidence to prove that the child rapist Jeffrey Epstein had a client list or blackmailed anybody or had been murdered or was guilty of anything else. There were no other financial crimes, no other co-conspirators. We read through the indictment of Jeffrey Epstein, the new one back in 2019. It was littered with others' involvement, employee one, employee two, all these other people, the pilots traveling back and forth, not to mention the financial crimes, which nobody even looked at. So the deputy FBI director who raised questions about Epstein's death before he joined is now very concerned, says in May that his review of the file and hours of video recording said he killed himself. We heard that. FBI Director Kash Patel also said the evidence that the Bureau has reviewed shows that Epstein was not murdered or close. And we have more information also on that missing minute because there was more reporting on that from Axios. But a source close to the DOJ told the Daily Wire that Kash Patel also wants Bondi gone and that he would consider departing alongside Bongino. That would be, major. And I think that would signal no confidence in the administration, ultimately, like the entire administration through the DOJ, of course. But then if you've got now Trump aligning with Bondi versus Dan in cash, and it's on an issue as substantive as these Epstein files, that could be catastrophic to the entire administration if this is not already a chip in that facade that they'll try to stop from crumbling. Mary Margaret says, okay, more. A source close to the DOJ says Kash Patel also wants Bondi gone and that he'd consider leaving if Bongino leaves. Also, that there are more frustrations with other documents Bondi hasn't released. Now Bongino is considering sending his resignation over the fallout. While it remains unclear if Bongino will step down, his normally active official social media account has been very quiet. Yeah, and let's check this morning to see if there's been anything new. And answer, no, nothing since July 9th. And if you remember back on these July 8th and July 9th posts, Dan was very happy, very excited about all the progress that they've been making. And we do pause to point out this is great progress. Like, we don't want 900 pounds of meth seized during the traffic stops. Like, we got that. But we also don't want 900 pedophiles running around our country. And so what is the response, I think, right? Everybody came down. No one really cares about this other stuff at the moment. Phil Kennedy, Mindy Robinson, John Cullen, everybody saying, come on, guys, like, what are you doing? We appreciate that, but don't try to, shove your 900 pounds of meth in our faces when we're looking for something else. Same thing from Dan in another post. Hey, the murder rate's dropping. It's like, great, murder rate's dropping. But what about the PDF file rate that's happening in the Virgin Islands? So all quiet since then. There's other reports that he's actually kind of vacated Washington, or at least the office. Bondi was criticized after the botched phase 1 release of the footage that was given to the influencers, and the influencers are all, especially the ones that I've seen, many of them who have been in this conversation as the recipients of that phase 1 file, are very unhappy because they feel like they were duped and kind of brought into this so that they could provide cover for Pam Bondi's ultimate decision, kind of get them on board, glad hand, and come to the White House, have a good time. And then you just pull the rug out from under them. Oof, not good. So you can see that was the report originally. Then what we saw is a lot of rumors about it. We saw Axios had a great report on this that we'll come back to, talking about this missing minute, and even CNN's confirming it now. So we've got CNN, we've got Mediaite, and many others. But one of the big updates was from Todd Blanche himself, because of course we're all wondering about who signed the document, right? Who approved it? And there was no signature on it. Now, the reason, and that's not entirely unusual. Like, there are times when there are unsigned memos and it just comes from the DOJ. And it's just, I don't know if it's for cases like as big as this, but, like, in other words, they will unsign memos and they're just, oh, this is the new policy or something. But they didn't give us anything on the Epstein stuff other than the 2 pages that was filled with garbage. And we saw, I think it was that same week, that they came out and released, or rather Kristi Noem came out and had a full press briefing about take your shoes off at the TSA, like a whole team, backdrops, podium, everything for that. Like, congratulations, America. After all this hard work, you can keep your shoes on rather than take your shoes off. And you go, well, that's great news, actually, because we're tired of that too. But if we can get a press conference for the shoe decision, maybe we could get a press conference for the Epstein decision, because, it's kind of a big deal. And since they didn't have any signatures on there, of course, we don't know who ultimately signed off on it. Now, if it came from the DOJ, and in the memo, it says the FBI did their due diligence, the DOJ did their due diligence, and we've come to this conclusion, right? You just presume it's a bundle of all the people. You presume it's a bundle of 1 and 2 of the DOJ, which is Pam Bondi and this guy, Todd Blanche here. And on the other side, the FBI, which is subordinate to the DOJ, Kash and Dan. So all 4 of them would smash their heads together and write the memo, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have a fracture from the get-go, right? Or did Pam and Todd or other people just sign off for Kash and Dan? And so here's what Todd says, right? We still don't get a lot of clarity on this. It's like, I worked closely with FBI Director Cash. And Todd Blanche, if you remember, was one of Trump's defense attorneys back during his multiple criminal prosecutions and has been around and very loyal and very reliable for quite some time as it related to Trump's defense. So he's here saying, I worked closely. In other words, I think he's got credibility. I worked closely with FBI Director Cash and Dan Bongino on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. Now, all of us signed off on the contents of the memo, right? We didn't sign off on the memo, but we signed off on the contents of the memo. And then we get this question of a game of telephone, right? This idea that somebody says something, it passes off to another person, then it passes off to another person. And by the time it gets to that third person, it's a whole different story. It's like Bobby sells seashells by the seashore. And by the time you get to it, the bottom's like go past it. It's like Hunter Biden's a crackhead. You're like, what? Is that what you said, Johnny? It's like, no, that's not what I said. But that's what you get to. So the same thing is happening here. We signed off on the contents of the memo, but what does that mean? Is there a paper trail? Is there a chain of custody? Is there an email? Hey, we're going to say, hey, Dan, by the way, we're going to say Epstein did basically all of the criminality himself and between Ghislaine Maxwell, no third parties, no additional crimes, no blackmail, no connections to any financial transactions that are problematic, nothing. And he says, okay, great, and responds in Slack or responds in email. That should be documented somewhere, right? Or did this happen in a meeting? And now we're looking for Dan and Cash to come out and respond to us. All of us signed off on the contents and the conclusion stated in the memo. So if that's true, why would Dan be backtracking on that? Or is he? Or is this just some other party who's trying to cause a fissure within the Trump executive branch? There's also another possibility here too. It's that Dan Bongino and the administration is doing a little bit of PR, right? To say, look, we're all going to stay unified, but we're not all happy about it, right? Let's like, I'm mad like you are, kind of a good cop, bad cop routine that they would then continue on the path, right? So Pam Bondi did this, and some people are happy with her, a lot of people unhappy with her, but she's kind of the bad cop. Then Dan comes out for the MAGA base. He's the good cop. They keep them together. They just move this thing forward. And some of us feel satiated that Dan threw a fit about it or something. But the suggestion from Todd, he says, by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI and the DOJ, between Dan and Pam, or Cash and Pam, on this memo's composition and release is patently false. And that's pretty unequivocal. Now, no one really is buying it, right? Viva, what's up? Robbie Starbuck, Laura Loomer, Cernovich saying there's a lot you guys can do. You can unseal search warrants. You don't have to give us access to all of the case files, but you can start to give us some more materials that we can investigate so we can get to the bottom of it. But what Pam did really, I think, is worse than not doing anything, right? They could have slow rolled all those documents. Okay, you want phase 1? Here you go. You want phase 2? Here you go. Here's a search warrant. You want phase 3? Here you go. 6 months later, phase 4. Okay. But then by the time the administration's over, you go, well, we gave you basically everything we have, and you kind of just let the thing peter out. But what Bondi did is affirmatively essentially exonerate everybody else, which really, I don't know how that is of interest to anybody other than maybe the administration, because they want to stop talking about it and they don't want to actually release the documents that might be very problematic for a certain ally that Tucker Carlson is going to talk about in a minute. So Todd Blanche, and it is going to be true, but there's other reporting that this also happened. So here's the thing. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, according to CNN, has told people he's considering resigning. This is from other sources. Now, these are other sources telling CNN, right? So this is sort of seen as a corroboration. We had Margaret O'Hallahan was over with the Daily Wire, and then now CNN is getting wind of it too. So it says, this comes after a heated confrontation. The infighting took place on Wednesday, and it was between a meeting. There was a meeting. Bongino-Bondi, Kash Patel, and Susie Wiles. Uh-oh, mom's home. Mom came in. All right, everybody, sit down. Now, I don't know if she, my mom would have made me and my younger brother hold hands on the couch until we behaved, and we would have started behaving immediately and then had to evacuate whatever that was. But it worked. It was a very effective strategy, I think, because we stopped fighting totally. So I don't know. I don't know if Susie Wiles made Bongino and Bondi hold hands on the couch, but maybe that'll be the next step. Bongino and Patel were confronted about whether they were behind a story that they said the FBI wanted more information released, but was ultimately stymied. Dang, that's called into the principal's office. Okay, so Susie Wiles just said, we're seeing some stories out there that you're very unhappy about this. Would you care to explain? Bongino denied leaking the notion or the memo over to News Nation, which published the story. A source familiar with the matter told CNN, though he did not sign on to a statement defending the review included in the article. Now, CNN reached out to Bongino and the FBI. The sources cautioned that Bongino had not made up his mind, and it was possible that he would stay in the position. Now, Axios first reported some of the details of Bongino's confrontation at the White House. We'll check that in a second. But this episode comes as many of Trump's close advisors, both inside, have grown increasingly frustrated with Bondi and the Epstein files. Multiple sources said Bongino did not even come to work on Friday, fueling speculation he quit. One of those sources said that as of Friday afternoon, he had not left his position. The whole thing has been a complete mess and no one is happy, someone told CNN. Yeah, and if this happened, like, how does Dan go back now and just say, well, sorry about that. I thought I was very upset about this PDF file cover-up, but I slept on it over the weekend and now I'm not that upset about it. And so I'll just come back into work. It's kind of like a George Costanza situation where George, quits and then kind of shows up the next day like nothing happened at all. So how are they going to paper over this? Yeah, it's a complete mess. Absolutely, 100%. Epstein is a disgrace. That we can all agree on. 100% mess. One of the worst rollouts of a campaign promise that we've ever seen. I mean, this was a key part of the conversation, key part of Dan and Cash's rise to prominence and potentially even getting these positions. And then we just get a 2-page memo, not even a press briefing or anything like that. So yeah, it's been a total mess after they started to kind of drip out the red meat in phase 1 that backfired bigly. Now, Epstein is a disgraced financier. We know he is. FBI and justice officials have been at odds for months about the handling of the files review. But that tension spilled out publicly on Friday when far-right provocateur, I don't know about that, Laura Loomer, she is provocative, who is close with people in the administration, wrote on social media. She said Bongino and Patel were livid with Bondi. She wrote Bondi is taking the day off, or Bongino is taking the day off from his job, and now there's speculation he's not going to return. Todd Blanche came out, put the kibosh on that. White House Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields also said Trump has assembled. They posted this also from Mary Margaret O'Hallahan. So the White House came out and responded and said a lot the same, said, look, the White House weighs in through H. Fields, 47, special assistant to Caroline Leavitt, actually to the principal deputy press secretary. So it's kind of like the number 3, let's say, right? So it's Caroline, actually principal deputy press secretary. Okay, so like number 2, let's say, like right around number 2, maybe directly under Caroline. So not Caroline, but someone under Caroline. And his name is Harrison. What's up, Harrison? Says, President Trump has assembled a highly qualified and experienced law and order team dedicated to protecting Americans, holding criminals accountable, and delivering justice to victims. This work is being carried out seamlessly and with unity. There is no daylight between us. Any attempt to sow division within this team is baseless and distracts from the real progress being made in restoring public safety and pursuing justice for all, except the victims of Epstein and his co-conspirators. So as you can see, that was reported, and we saw CNN continues to saying Bondi orchestrated an event in February, which we saw. Influencers were brought over there. Bongino repeated promises that the files would be released. Now, at least one of the frustrations comes back to this 10-hour surveillance video, the missing minutes. At least one of Bongino's frustrations was about this. As the investigators spent weeks combing through the records related to the Epstein investigation, Bongino discovered the video, which we told didn't exist. The deputy director was elated by the discovery. We've got video. He said this was definitive evidence that Epstein had not been murdered, they said. But after the video was released, members of the public and the press observed that the video jumped forward, cutting out 60 seconds entirely. Bondi has publicly said that the outdated recording system that produced the video resets every day at midnight and the same minute is skipped every evening. But still, theories about what happened in that minute exploded online, and Axios has more of a report on this as well. And they were blamed internally for the oversight. Now, Patel and Bongino have privately expressed frustration for months, but Todd says they signed off on that memo. So Axios gave us more on this 1 minute missing from the files, and they were explaining a bit more about how this was assembled. And so again, another corroborating report. This one came out, actually this was archived, but they write here, yep, Bongino was absent on Friday. And this comes from 4 sources familiar with the report, saying all this erupted on Wednesday, fallout of the administration saying that they're walking back their claims. They didn't say that, but that's how they're phrasing it, saying there was no client list. He wasn't murdered, and he did everything by himself. He was just a broad pervert. He wasn't somebody who was working with anybody else like Lex Wessner and the rest of them. Bongino didn't come to work on Friday. Some insiders thought he had quit. And you show back up on Monday like, oh no, I was just, stomach bug. But administration officials say he is still on the job, even as internal tension continues. Now, here is what is at the center of the argument, according to these 4 sources. A surveillance video from outside Epstein's cell that the administration released saying it was proof that no one had entered the video. And we watched this video multiple times, parsing together the time between midnight, essentially, where we lost the 1 minute at 11:59. The missing minute, authorities say, is a problem. The 10-hour video has been what is widely called the missing minute, fueling conspiracy theories in MAGA's online world about a cover-up involving his death. Well, that has been additive to the conspiracy about his death. It's not the sole basis for it, but the analysis has been about why is it missing? Like, can you not ask questions about this? Why is it connected to a conspiracy to ask about why an entire minute is clearly missing and why the camera angles change from the perspective of the lens. Now, the 10-hour video had what was widely called a missing minute. The missing minute, authorities say, stemmed from an old video surveillance recording system that goes down each day at midnight to reset and record anew. It takes a minute for that process to occur, which effectively means that 60 seconds of every day are not recorded, is what they said it was. And Pam was going to also check whether he was a foreign agent, if you recall. So Bongino, who had pushed the Epstein conspiracy theories, it's not a conspiracy because, as you can see, there's a lot of evidence here. The podcast host talked a lot about this before being appointed, and they're calling Cash another conspiracy theorist. Got it. But after the video's missing minute was discovered, Bongino was blamed internally for the oversight, according to 3 sources. Okay, so Bongino's now getting some of the scorn, and maybe this is a reaction to being blamed for something that he had nothing to do with. We're also looking for who's going to be the scapegoat on this thing. If the cover-up has gone this far, such that we now have the DOJ basically writing and signing memos, arguably for Dan and Cash, there's some evidence of that, don't know whether that's true or not, then that is a full court press to stop this stuff from coming out. So do we think that if Dan and Cash are successful, that we're going to suddenly have all of the Epstein files and that we're going to get this tranche of materials? Or probably not, right? Probably that there will be some other attack on them or some other methodology that will prevent it from coming out. Now, I'm not to say that we shouldn't be working on getting those records and getting those materials from coming out, but if the entire White House and what you might imagine is all the intelligence agencies, FBI, probably some pressure from the CIA, probably pressure from foreign intelligence like Mossad and others who are keeping this thing locked down, what are they going to do? How are they going to change the subject? People are going to be demanding a scalp, right? If we're not getting, metaphorically, not getting the records and the materials that we want. So who is that going to be? Who is the administration going to offer up? They could just offer up Pam Bondi, just say, all right, enough already. This whole thing was botched. It's been a good year, right? Keep her for a year or whatever. And then she resigns and moves off. They appoint a special prosecutor, and then people suddenly calm down a little bit because it's not so hot. We're not right immediately in the fire. And now we've got essentially a political scalp for the malfeasance. But as far as we can tell, right, Pam Bondi is not necessarily the one responsible for anything that Epstein did. And so, great, if she screwed this release process up and the reveal to the public, and we get recourse for that screw up, that still doesn't satisfy the injustice that was done with Epstein, right? So in other words, the sacrificial lamb is not good enough. And if they turn around and just say, well, here you go, sorry, we screwed this up. Here, now Pam Bondi's gone, or Dan Bongino's gone, or somebody, then I think that is just going to exacerbate things. Now, two sources familiar with Bongino's position say he was increasingly displeased with Bondi's handling of the Epstein case because she had publicly overpromised and underdelivered disclosures about an Epstein client list that apparently never delivered on my desk. Laura Loomer also wrote on X, we saw that in the CNN article. During the meeting, inside the room, Bongino was confronted about a News Nation article that said he and Patel wanted more information released about the article, but were being held back. Susie Wiles said, Dan, did you leak this? No. One source said, Pam Bondi said her piece, Dan said his piece, and it didn't end on friendly terms on Wednesday. Said one person briefed on the heated discussion. Bongino left angry. And I wonder if President Trump was in that room. It doesn't seem like it. Pam said her piece. The fact is, Dan was for releasing the information with the video and had no problem until he got the heat online. Interesting, right? So then people start to backtrack on Dan. He starts posting his 900-pound methamphetamine videos, and people say, no one cares about your meth, Dan. Bongino found the video with the missing minute. He vouched for it after a thorough review and said that this would end the matter, said Dan. When that didn't work, he lost his mind and ran out of D.C., is what Axios' source says. Said a pro-Bongino source, said, wait, Dan is not the bad guy here, okay? He shouldn't take the fall on this, right? So who is that scapegoat going to be? And if it's Dan, there's going to be, if it's Dan and not Pam, there's going to be a MAGA revolt. The blow-up involving Trump's senior law enforcement officials showed just how much the administration has been rocked by this. At different times, Bondi, Bongino, and Patel have complained to others that they were being unfairly blamed for this. I think there's some truth to that. I mean, they didn't abuse all of these people and cover it up for 20 years, but they also talked a lot about releasing this stuff. And so they made us assurances. In other words, they made a new agreement. Like, we're not asking them to correct or to be responsible for the entire investigation. We understand. You just got in here 6 months ago, right? Try to take over a group project or any other project, whether it's construction or, in school or whatever it is. Taking somebody else's stuff over is always difficult. You got to go back. You get blamed for a lot of it, and you kind of inherit all of the problems of the prior entity. So we understand that. We're not trying to blame Pam and Dan and Cash for the abuse that was enabled by our government and our CIA for 3 decades. But we do want them to hold to the agreements that they made with us, which is to at least be transparent about it, right? They may come to a different conclusion than we want them to come to. They may say, you know what, Epstein did kill himself. And we say, okay, fine. Or whatever. And we might disagree with it, but they got to be transparent about the process and show us who was in these meetings, who signed off on it, because now we've got this pointing a finger at each other situation, and it's just doing more damage to everything. Bongino, a former Secret Service agent, joined the administration. Todd Blanche weighed in. He says there is no daylight between any of us. So as you can see, multiple reports now. We've got CNN. We've got Dan Bongino. Still hasn't said anything as of this morning. Let's do a quick Cash Patel search. See if the FBI director has anything for us here. And nothing since July 11th from Cash. So that's the roundup on that. And we have more reporting that came out from Fox News. And here's what they said in a very short snippet from their site.
Mr. Bongino is thinking about his future with the FBI. We're told that both FBI Director Kash Patel and the Attorney General have every intention to stay and continue to serve. Mr. Bongino is
every intention to stay and to serve, which means they're going to have to play nice with each other. And I'm not sure how long that can last. And Dan's going to have to return to the office and basically act like his original outrage was unjustified, if you believe that. Now, we also saw this interesting report from The Storm Has Arrived. Clip this over from Just the News. And this is John Solomon here. John Solomon, of course, very well plugged in, and he runs Just the News over there. And he was having an interview here with Steve Bannon, and he's reporting that there's going to be something big coming down the line. And we've covered a lot of these stories here. John Brennan in particular is the one person who we thought, man, if they indicted him or even opened a special prosecutor into him, that would be a huge opening, because he was former CIA director. And as bad as Epstein was, he was, let's say, an agent adjacent or an intelligence adjacent asset who was an enabled criminal. But the CIA director is a position of legitimacy. So if you now have a special prosecutor that's going in and saying that John Brennan or guys like James Comey and Clapper were sitting in an Oval Office room with Barack Obama, contemplating how they could steal the 2016 election away from Trump by blaming the Russians on election rigging, all of that, right, would be an opening into another case that would be massive. Okay, massive. Again, that's kind of the shiny object, though, right? Like, just as we're watching for the scapegoat, who can be blamed for all of this and who can, they can pin this on, we're also looking for the next levels. And here, that would be, according to John Solomon, something involving Comey, Brennan, which also might be distracting for this conversation, just to deviate us away from Epstein, right? Look over here, it's Brennan and Comey, which would be a huge get for justice, because these guys were some of the worst on the planet. Anyways, this is John Solomon and Steve Bannon having this conversation.
And I think next week, over the next 10 days, the base who's been wondering, where's all that accountability? They're going to get some big surprises over the next week concerning where the conspiracy began a few weeks before Crossfire Hurricane was open, and when it ended, all the way in 2024, when they were still trying to pursue Donald Trump to keep him from winning the presidency. There's a big case that's been built by the Justice Department and the FBI. It's been masked by a lot of this infighting and drama and soap opera stuff, but the truth of the matter is, MAGA base Americans are going to be happy when they see where this is all heading in the next few weeks. Kash Patel is going nowhere. I hope Dan Bongino isn't going anywhere, but I do think he's going to take some time over the weekend to think that through.
So hold it. We got three huge leads there.
Yep.
Number one, I want to go back. You're saying the 10-year conspiracy against President Trump to try to thwart his first term, steal the second term,
right,
and basically surround him in his second term or third victory.
Yep.
That has been an ongoing investigation that the FBI is already doing.
Yeah.
Does the Brennan
conspiracy case? There was hinted at. In fact, it was hinted at, Steve, in some of the media reporting, but I've got to confirm there's a conspiracy case that was opened that looks at this window as a very large window. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a special prosecutor named by Pam Bondi in the next week or two. And why does this become significant? Because you don't have to necessarily.
Because it would be a big distraction, first of all. So if they come back out and say, we're going to appoint a special prosecutor to go after John Brennan, that's going to suck up a lot of attention away from the Epstein story and deviate the energy over to John Brennan, who is also a monstrous person for entirely different reasons and with different methodologies, probably. But here is more.
Necessarily then bring the grand jury or the indictment in Washington, D.C., where the 90% Democrat jury pool probably won't convict even if they had a murder. It allows them to go to someplace like Florida. One act of the overt conspiracy could very well be, Steve, that they raided President Trump's Mar-a-Lago house with false pretenses. And then you can bring the grand jury in Florida.
And part of that raid, as we've talked about, may have been to go get the Crossfire Hurricane documents that implicated them, right? In other words, when Trump left in 2020, at the end of the term, he took documents that showed that Obama, Clapper, Brennan, and Comey, all of them were working together to create this fake story about the Russians turned into Crossfire Hurricane and that entire investigation that dogged him. So did the FBI and the DOJ concoct some pretense to go into the residence to get those documents back? And of course, if they did, what happened to those documents? And is there any record of that? And Trump hopefully knew that he had those documents, right? And can try to recreate them or backtrace them to pass back off to Pam Bondi for this indictment. But again, it's not Epstein.
Bring the indictment in Florida because an overt act of the conspiracy occurred there. Maybe several overt acts of the conspiracy occurred there. You don't have to have a all blue jury in Washington, D.C. that has Trump derangement syndrome. So this has been going on behind the scenes. I've been working on this. I decided tonight to get some of this out there. Been talking about in my show. This is a really big deal. Now, who becomes a special prosecutor? How far ranging is it? That's to be determined by the scope memo that a Pam Bondi would write. But there is some work on a scope memo that's been done already. And there is an enormous opportunity for those of us who've been calling for accountability to see a path to it for the first time. A legitimate path, not smoke, not mirrors, a legitimate path to accountability.
Yeah, we've heard that for a long time, for many, many years, that there was stuff working in the works. Even back during the first term, I think we thought that there was going to be a lot of activity and that there were investigations and that something was going to break and we finally get to the bottom of everything. And we kind of thought we were there, honestly. Like we thought that we just had that. Like we just won. You guys were just going to go in there, Dan, Cash, and Pam, and clean house and do your investigation and start releasing things in phases and all the things. And we didn't get that. So it's just like, what? Something else is going to be coming later. Like, you just said we were going to get this thing and we didn't. And now you're moving it again. So, or you're going to give us something else later down the line. So, all right. We appreciate the talking. It feels like a lot of this is, good reporting. I'm not blaming John Solomon on any of this. We appreciate him bringing the news to us, but the people reporting this to him and telling him about this feels like it's a big reaction to the current backlash on the Epstein stuff.
Also, let me just ask you on this conspiracy, does that mean, because people talk about the statute of limits and you can only get Brennan for perjury, lying to Congress, right, that you can't get him for everything involved in Crossfire Hurricane, everything involved with the nullification project, the Russian hoax? Are you saying by being a criminal conspiracy that's still ongoing, that we can go back in time 10 years and still get Brennan and still get all these guys for more serious charges of conspiracy of a coup d'etat, sir? That's
how conspiracy cases can work. You can charge a series of events into a larger conspiracy and go back beyond the window of time that the normal statute of limitations for any single crime occurred. And keep in mind, there's also, prosecutors can make a very powerful argument that if you didn't know the crime had occurred because it had been hidden, the statute of limitations could actually reset for a period of time. But I think the most likely scenario is a large conspiracy case, and it starts in the middle of July 2016 when John Brennan walks into President Obama 2 weeks before, or a few days before Crossfire Hurricane's launch, and said, "Hey, we have this intercepted information that Hillary Clinton has authorized a program to make it look like Donald Trump's a Russian spy and Vladimir Putin is helping him." President Obama and Brennan knew before the FBI opened up on that information that this was a dirty trick by Hillary Clinton. That would be the first overt act. And then
yeah, we got that. But remember, we went through the whole John Durham thing too. And they thought in that investigation that they were going to crack the shell on this whole thing. And we had the Michael Sussman trial, who ultimately got acquitted by a rigged jury in DC. And so we were waiting around forever for the Durham report to come out and also unveil the depth of this very concern. And that turned out to be a dud too.
Would carry all the way through Ukraine impeachment. It could go into the FBI refusing to look at the Chinese interference in the 2020 election as one of the overt acts. They didn't want to help Donald Trump, so they ignored a potential counterintelligence threat. It allows for a very large series of events to be wrapped into a single conspiracy and all of them to be brought into the indictment.
Yeah, and that is another very big one that we talked a lot about, the IDs that were being shipped in from China and Hong Kong by the tune of 10,000 to 20,000 a batch that were being captured by our Border Patrol facilities in Detroit, Cincinnati, many other places. FBI got notice of that. They actually sent out a giant memo to everybody in the FBI, and then they had to recall that memo because it was true and they didn't want that to happen. So then they buried that memo. We read through a lot of that there as well. So the point is, there is a lot to dig into, right? This can go deep. Their corruption is far and wide. That's why we're so upset about Epstein, because Epstein, as horrific and horrendous as it is, if this one is not resolved, then we start to have the feeling that, okay, look, this is like the big kahuna here. So if you can't solve this one, how can we trust you or rely on you to solve any of these other things, like to go after Brennan or Comey or any of these other people who are more powerful, certainly, maybe, than Epstein, depending on, you know, what you think he had on people in terms of his blackmail and stuff, but more legitimately powerful than Epstein, right? Ran the CIA, was the director of national intelligence, ran the FBI. These are people inside the system who might be under investigation. Those are big, big gets. And of course, they've been very problematic. We've been covering it here for years now, but again, it's not exactly Epstein. And when they promise us one thing and don't deliver, and then promise us something on another thing, it's hard to believe that they're going to deliver on that, although we hope that they do, and certainly wish them the best on that effort. Now, we also had this, Tucker Carlson, not mincing words last night. He was over there in Tampa, Florida at the Turning Point USA event, and he came out and just said, it's time to say it. Jeffrey Epstein was connected to Mossad. Here is Tucker.
Not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting US president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen. And you have a right to expect that your government will not act against your interests, and you have a right to demand that foreign governments not be allowed to act against your interests.
That's right.
That's not creepy. It shouldn't be forbidden. And yet all of us have trained ourselves to believe that you can't say that somehow, that that's like too naughty and forbidden. And the effect of making that off limits has been to create a lot of resentment, and I'll say it, hate online, where people feel like they can't just say, like, what the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of a foreign government? By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why? And I think the longer that we play along with it, the more subterranean and creepy and hateful the conversation actually becomes. So I think it's better just to say it right out loud. Did this happen? And of course, that question has been asked to the government of Israel, and their answer is, we're not going to tell you. And I think our answer should be, no. As long as we're sending you money, if you were committing crimes on our soil, we have an absolute right to know, did you do this or not? And yet everybody has been so brainwashed into thinking that's somehow an expression of hate or bigotry, when it's not. It's a baseline question that every U.S. citizen has a right to an answer on. What the hell was this? And by the way, if it turns out that it was nothing, not acceptable,
that's fine. But we need to have the transparency that is connected to it. We need answers and real answers. So Tucker Carlson, I think, delivering a very appropriate message that we should be able to ask about what's happening in our country without having to worry about being called things that we're not. We care about America. We care about whether we have our CIA and foreign intelligence working pedophile rings in our country. That's a pretty big deal. You can't allow that to happen and then fake like you have a functional society if that is the seedy underbelly that really exists underneath. So, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. So that's the update on the Dan and Cash fallout. And now it's time to hear from you. Let's see what you say about all of this and more. And happy Saturday. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. Here's a quick Grand Canyon view so you can see what it's looking like out there. Little hazy. All that smog over there is from a fire. But what can you do? Oh, look at that nice couple walking. They don't know that they're on a live stream. Hey, say hi to everybody. What a nice couple. All right. So, yeah, what a nice couple. So, my friends, let's see what you say about all this and more. Happy Saturday. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being amazing. And let's see what you say about all of this. We got some great donos. We got some great gifts in the house. What a beautiful day it is. Yeah, so that's another great question. Hey Now says, what about a special prosecutor? Or if Pam Bondi resigns or is forced out, what about Matt Gaetz as a recess appointment? Here, this one came in from Hey Now. Gaetz is special counselor. Yeah, could be fun. Bring that back. Zena Xavier says, Rob, when you covered the Maxwell trial, we did the FBI get his address book in New York, in the New York raid on the table next to the telephone? We viewed the search. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. That testimony came up. They were asked about it. Remember, we even heard the testimony from the like the butlers, the house staff, who would say that remember, they had the house manual. They actually had a house manual, and the manual said keep one of these books by the telephone in the beds. So they would just like go down the checklist before Epstein would come and check it off. And so they talked about it. You know, do you ever look in it? And I think somebody said, I think I did look in it once. There was a lot of testimony about that. There were a bunch of people there in that trial alone. And so you wouldn't add the pilots who were flying girls to Epstein to the co-conspirator list, or you wouldn't, they didn't, I don't know, or you wouldn't even investigate them or say, hey, we at least interviewed the pilots. We at least interviewed these people who were there, or employee 1, employee 2 that were in Epstein's original indictment that never got prosecuted. So there is a PDF, of course, of that black book. A lot of it's redacted, but it does exist. And a lot of people might substitute that as the list and say that is actually the list, but you could just say that's just a phone book. And there's a bunch of people in there who probably didn't, do abusive things to children, fortunately, in there. What's up? We got some great comments, my friends. Thank you for sending these in. Cardinal O'Flanagan says, I did see one story showing that the video isn't even in Epstein's cell. That's right. Yeah, the video that we saw is not from Epstein's cell. It's from basically another angle that shows the hallway that leads to his cell. The diagram showed the camera has no view of his cell. Have you seen this? Yeah, it is definitely not his cell. So like that video that we saw in the DOJ is not his cell. And we read that in the OIG report, the 2023 Epstein death. Let me see if I can grab that real quick. Yeah, from the OIG. It was this one. If you remember, we read through this. So on the this is the report on the. Let me see. Am I sharing this? Here we are. Yeah, this was the report on the Epstein death. And if you recall, there was some conversation about the footage. Yeah, the available recorded footage. So we do have some footage, right? From one shoe camera captured a large part of the common area and portions of the stairways leading to different shoe tiers, different levels, including Epstein's tier. Thus, anyone or attempting to entering his shoe tier from the common area would have been picked up by that video camera. Epstein's cell door was not in the camera's field of view. And this is the video that we released, right? So we were not seeing his cell in that video. The OIG reviewed the video and found, and I'm pretty sure this is the same video. It's like the only video that exists. The OIG reviewed the video and found that between 10:40 and 6:30, no one was seen entering Epstein's cell tier from the shoe common area. The OIG determined that movements captured on the video before and after those times were generally consistent with the employee actions described by the witnesses and documented in the records. Now, I don't think he made a note of a missing minute. Let's look. Let's look for minutes. Like, did he say, well, you know, I reviewed it, 30-minute rounds. Yeah, so I don't think he talks about the minute. So why did the OIG not comment on the 30-minute, on the 1 minute missing minute in his report? Probably because it didn't exist. And when they assembled the files using Adobe Premiere or something like that, which is a nice tool. That's what I like to use. Yeah, but here, so this also came over from Wired on this one. Says metadata shows that the FBI's raw Jeffrey Epstein video was likely modified, as we saw. I mean, it looks like it was 2 video files clipped together. The U.S. DOJ released nearly 11 hours of what it described as a full raw surveillance footage from a camera positioned near his cell. And here, let me share this with you again. Here we go. This one. The raw video file data. Experts say it's unclear exactly what was changed, but it was not raw. Metadata embedded in the video and analyzed by Wire and independent video forensics experts show that rather than being a direct export from the prison surveillance system, the footage was modified, likely using the professional editing tool called Adobe Premiere Pro. The file appears to have been assembled from at least 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported, and then uploaded to the website where it was presented as raw footage. And yeah, this is interesting because I've requested a lot of footage from the government, from jails, from body cams, from police vehicles. And a lot of them are different, have proprietary systems. They're very difficult to access. They actually don't make it easy for defense attorneys to access it. Like, got to install this third-party software. It's like, can you just give me an MP4 file, please? And I'll just open that. They won't do it. So there might be some truth to that. Like, you know, it gets exported into some weird, bizarre file, and they needed to throw it into Adobe to convert it. Like, I could see that as justification for needing to re-render it as a viewable format. But the editing, I think, is the one that really stood out on us, because not only did we miss the minute, but we also saw the missing angle. The angle shifted a little bit, and it looks like, I think I even made that comment, that it looks like you just added another video to it and you didn't resize it exactly the same. Like, it's a pixel or 2 off. And you're just lazy, you know, you just didn't seamlessly connect those 2 files together. But then why would you clip out a minute of it? Like, you have to be like one of the worst file editors ever if you're going to just like splash 2 files together and cut off a minute. I know, because I've done it many times. Metadata says it was not raw. Experts say it's unclear what exactly was changed. Metadata does not prove manipulation. The video may have simply been processed for public release. There you go. With no modifications beyond stitching together 2 clips. But in the absence of a clear explanation of the file, why they use editing software. In a case already clouded by suspicion, it just adds ambiguity. So, yeah, so that's more on that if you're wondering what happened with that video file. Yeah. What's up, Cardinal Flanagan? Thank you for this one. Great comment. Fred Pedamonte. What's up, Fred? Fred and Johnny says, Johnny has never said anything about seashells. And Johnny is this real handsome pup down here. And that's because Johnny's a real good boy. And he would never, ever post anything as criminal as James Comey. Hey, what's up, Wes Downer? What's up, Wes? Says, if the Epstein story is going to take over the narrative for the next 6 months, then so be it. You're going to need a whole bunch of new membos, and here they come. I'll be back for the midterms next January, from Wes Downer. Good to see you, Wes. If the Epstein story is going to take over, so be it. Because of the Epstein tariff. I forgot about the Epstein tariff. We're going to have a lot of tariffs here. Things are going to get pretty expensive. Well, we're going to continue to cover it, and we'll see what the administration does. It feels like they're going to try to find a new shiny object to attach to. It's Comey. It's Brennan. A special prosecutor. Spend your time on this for 2 years. Maybe they'll appoint John Durham again. What's up? Zena Xavier. Hey, and Wes Downer brought in 10 membos as well. Thank you, Wes. 10 new membos gifted courtesy of Wes D. Thank you, Wes, for doing that. New membo friends, welcome aboard. It is great to have you. We've got Zena Xavier is here. Says, thank you for that one, Zena. Yeah, we talked about the Maxwell trial, definitely. Thank you for that one earlier. Jack Mack. Hey, Jack Mack, it's good to have you back. Jack Mack is back as a YouTube member. Good to see you, Jack. Hopefully your Saturday is just beautiful and amazing. Good to see you. What's up, Jacob? Jacob, thank you for this. Very nice donut today. Very generous of you. Appreciate that. Jacob Holly. What's up, Jacob? Says Pam Bondi must be fired and removed, and all people around her must be investigated for threatening her and others with seditious conspiracy. Trump cannot afford this. I'm not going to lie. I'm angry. I will not vote if this isn't fixed. Disgusting. Yeah. See, so this is an interesting split on this. And I think that there's a lot of tension on this because people are trying to figure out where to land, because Epstein is obviously a major, major issue. And I think the issue, right? The issue is catastrophic, not because, here's how I see it. If you allow this to go by, it will taint all of the other future good things that you do, which is not good for the administration, right? Because then they can come out, they can go after Comey, they can go after anybody else they want to, and people will just look around and say, yeah, but, okay, it's the same thing that we showed earlier with the 900 pounds of meth. Like, that's a great deal. It's a good bust. We want murder rates to drop. Like, that's all good. But so what? We don't care. And so it's a trust thing, really, and it's an integrity thing. And if Bondi sticks around, and honestly, if Dan sticks around now after these reports, if these reports are true, and they're going to say that they're not true, right? Dan was sick. Dan was not true. Everybody's coming back. We're going to be singing Kumbaya. Susie Wiles has a magic touch, and everything's going to be fine. But if you do that, right, I think that it's going to undermine Dan, it's going to undermine Pam, and it's going to just be the beginning seeds of a much bigger problem. So, and I don't know that Trump's going to want to fire, right? Trump's not going to fire Pam Bondi, I don't think, because then Trump's going to have to come back down and say, well, we got to reopen this Epstein stuff. And he has no taste for that at all. So is this a political maneuver where you just say, we're just going to bury our heads in and just drive this train forward, right? It's a news cycle politics story. Just give it 6 months. Everyone on our side will just burn ourselves out. There'll be a new threat. We'll go after Comey or something and we'll all move on. But on the other side of that equation is Jacob saying, I'm not moving on at all. Like, I'm not going to vote for somebody who won't even address this. If you can't address this, like if you can't dribble the ball, how can we expect you to slam dunk on Brennan and Comey? I understand what you're saying, Jacob. I understand completely. Now, the other practical implication of this, of course, is if you don't vote and the Democrats win, then what happens then? Like, do things get worse? Do you take the small victories that you can take and just move on and just chalk it up to politics? Or is this really something that is as catastrophic as it seems to be? What's up, Carol? Carol Lamphere. Carol, thank you for this, Carol. Very nice of you. Very generous of you this morning. Thank you for sending this one in. Carol Lamphere. Appreciate you. Jack Mack. What's up, Jack? Says, I care about the Epstein details, but it's just not a top priority for me. Part of me wonders if they release what a flawed video is on purpose. That video is garbage, though. Doesn't disprove anything. Yeah. Yeah. And in other words, you could also release a video that has some red meat in it as a shiny object and a distraction. So then people just spend all their time on that. And it's also got a benign explanation, kind of like a limited hangout. It's like, well, there's something wrong with this video. So what we're going to do is just smash it together, and we're going to create a new problem that we can explain rather than the current problem that we can't explain. And now that one, everybody's talking about the 1 minute, missing video. So, and I think a lot, the distinction for me too is like, if Epstein was just Epstein and he was solo and it was him and Ghislaine and he's dead and she's in prison and that was the end of it, it's like, all right, fine. Maybe you want more, but we know there's way more than that, right? There's all the financial crimes, there's all the co-conspirators, even according to the DOJ's own documents. So if you know all of that, how do you enable the administration to continue going on without addressing any of that in progress? So good comment. Thank you, Jack, for sending that one in. What's up, Zena Xavier? 28 months as a membo. Zena, thank you for being here for 28 months. How awesome is that? Thanks for being here for 28 months. We got Jack Mack. What's up, Jack? Another one says, next question. What's the footage modified before it was provided to the FBI or after? Yeah, great question. All great questions that we would like to know. What would have been nice, Jack, is if Pam Bondi came out and took a couple questions on it, and Dan could come out and answer those questions. Dan, you released this video. You approve of it? Yeah. What happened here? Explain it. Well, the 1 minute is this, and we edited it together, and our editor's an idiot. So we're going to re-edit it. We're going to put it back together. We're going to get that minute back in just 2 minutes. Sorry about that. Whatever. Just answer a couple questions, but he never did. They just released the memo, and now all this is backroom finger pointing. And it sounds like that blow up happened. I mean, there's 4 different sources now talking about it to various media outlets. So we don't know. You don't know. Did the jail process the footage and export it at the jail and then send it to the FBI, or did the jail just send the proprietary video files, which I think is more often the case, right? They just send you the proprietary files. That way you can't say that they manipulated anything. You say it came right out of our cameras. Then you get it over in your file system, and it's like, a CXZ file or something you've never even heard of. And it doesn't open unless you install their proprietary software. So then maybe they install that software and then edit the device over at the FBI headquarters. Good questions. What's up, Wes D? What's up, Wes? Hopefully I'll be spending the bulk of the summer on the coast. We don't have great internet down there. Well, Wes, yeah, that sounds like a good spot to be when it is warm at the coast near the ocean, soaking it up. Maybe you should get a Starlink or something that can connect you. I was looking at bonded cellular, but the Wi-Fi here is not terrible. We've got like 1 bar. I don't know how it's coming across on your end, but it says we're not like terrible, which is good. What's up, Philip B? But I was looking at bonded cellular. I was thinking, how do you bond 4 cellular devices together plus a Wi-Fi? There's ways to do it. Philip Butler, Trump made this decision. Bondi executed it poorly. Yeah, and does that poor execution, is that enough justification for Trump to part ways with Pam Bondi or not? And I also wonder, like, not to give Trump an excuse on much of this, but I wonder how much he ultimately knows about it, genuinely. Like, if they're all just having this conversation kind of without him. And that makes sense even from a strategic, informational security component. Like, you just leave the president out a lot of these decisions, and he just doesn't know. So he really can't come in and solve a lot of it. So maybe has he read the memo? What's up, Stephen Hightower? Somebody should ask him, has he read the memo? Stephen Hightower, no matter who you voted for, you get John McCain. Ugh. John McCain. Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Remember him? Yeah, what's up? Philip Butler. Anyone identified on a video should be prosecuted. On an Epstein video. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if it's, the types of videos that you're talking about. Yeah. If it's an Epstein video, definitely. Yeah, good stuff. All right, my friends, thank you for sending those in. We had some comments and donos over on Locals. You guys are rock. Thank you for sending these in over on Locals. Hey, rub some dirt on it. Just shared this. He says, maybe, Rob, maybe you should have brought your C-Star, and that could have been your webcam, you big goof. I thought this GoPro, I thought I had it figured it out. I thought I could use this as a webcam, but I'm not that smart. All right, thank you. Rub some dirt on it. Good to see you. C-STAR is the galaxy telescope, and Rub Some Dirt on it is a Whirlpool Galaxy. Jack Hudler says, I'm invoking the Bongino rule. What is the Bongino rule? Is that like 48 hours or 24 hours or something? So it's 48 hours until you make a decision or comment on something. It's been since like Wednesday, right? Yeah, Jack Hudler. Yeah. We'll see. We haven't seen anything from Dan. We checked him out this morning. Didn't see anything. Jack Hudler, what's up? Chubby Stubby signed off on the memo that had absolutely 0 signatures. Trust me, bro. Equals trust me, bro. I know, and that was Todd Blanche's post, and he didn't. You noticed this, Chubby. He didn't say I signed off on the memo. He said we signed off on the contents and the conclusions of the memo. If you remember, the contents and the conclusions of the memo. Okay, because you didn't sign on the memo. We all know. Sharpie guy says Bondo, aka Plastic Barbie, Sharpie has never seen a camera she didn't like. She's got to go, Rob. Her aspirations don't align with MAGA, in my opinion, anyways. She's overpromised, trying to achieve her end goal, irregardless of who disagrees with her. Leaking to Axios seems confirmation enough, right? Well, I don't know if she leaked to Axios. It sounds like Susie Wiles thought it was Dan Bongino who leaked to Axios, or to rather News Nation. But yeah, she's in a real tough spot. It's going to be tough to see how they patched all this up, especially after the blowout this week. Gigum, would it have been illegal for Trump to make copies of his documents? That's a good question. I think if he kept possession of them and they're his documents, and basically you could say he declassified them. Like if he had rightful ownership of the documents, then I think they're his documents and he can copy the documents. Now, could he disseminate those documents to anybody else? And I'm sure there's national security rules about not copying classified documents. I'm sure there's a million of them that say you cannot do that. But he was the president. They were his documents. They were presidential records. So I think that you can make the argument that he could. A lot of people would make the argument that he couldn't. But I think you could take the harder argument and say that he could. Rub some dirt on it. What's up? Hey, that's your boy. Rob, thanks for sharing your family vacay time with us. The Grand Canyon images were excellent, but it's all about the time we spend together. Exactly right. Exactly right. And so today we're about to go have some breakfast here in a little bit, some family breakfast, and then we're going to see some sights. And if you missed that video, we dropped that late last night, so you may have missed it, but I posted that and showed you around the Grand Canyon. Thank you, Rub Some Dirt on it, for the nice dono, my man. And thanks for watching it. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for chilling with us as we're doing walk and talks. Bucky's is Rome. What's up? If it's a conspiracy, I want to see the journalists and Obama indicted. If it's a conspiracy, yeah, well, if the journalists were complicit in it, I'm sure you could say that they were committing acts in furtherance of the cover-up. NY says, okay, so the Epstein case is a concern, but please don't take our eyes off the problem here in California. There is a full, alive, and active insurrection going here in the Los Angeles area. Yeah, we've seen that, definitely. I've got some good stuff queued up on the immigration stuff. In fact, there was a good hearing on the Kilmar case. The Tennessee Star was reporting that Abrego's lawyers don't actually have his full immigration file, the A file. Do you have that? The judge said. They said no. Oh, so you don't even have the official documents that say he couldn't have gone to El Salvador? Because they don't exist. I emailed their lawyers for him too. They don't have it. They don't exist. Highland Aurora, what's up? Pics of the Grand Canyon. Beautiful. Highland Aurora. Highland Aurora is over from Scotland. Let's see if we can grab one of those photos. Here's my flat rainbow to cheer everyone up. It's very rare. I don't know if that was in the comments. Yeah, your flat rainbow is amazing. I've never seen a flat rainbow before, as far as I could tell. It's not showing up in the chat here at the moment, but maybe it will. Maybe I can grab it. Let me see. But thank you for that. So the flat rainbows are these things that apparently happen in Scotland, and they're very cool. It looks like a rainbow that is flat. And it's very neat. All right, let me make sure our screen is still functioning. Where am I? Boom. What's going on? Highland Aurora, thank you for that. Bonnie says, we are so connected at the hip to Israel. Epstein working for Mossad is almost like working for us. Even more reason to get full transparency. Yeah, and I think maybe decouple with other intelligence agencies that are running pedophile operations and not be a part of those things, you know. No matter what country it is, if it's the English, if it's Israel, whatever it is. Thank you, Bonnie. Buffalo Betsy, buddy, I missed you yesterday. I missed you too, Buffalo. I did miss you. We took the train up here. We had a great train trip. Then we went to dinner, walked around the rim. It was beautiful. Hope you're having fun. We're having a ton of fun. We're gonna have a great day today. Got the fams up here mingling, co-mingling, mixing into mingling, and it's great. Buffalo Betsy says Bannon and Poso just said Gates was headed to DC. He is who we need. He can't be bought. He's battle tested and will say the quiet part out loud. He has the courage and the spine. He's the man for the job. I think there's some truth to that, which is why they worked so hard to make sure he was not the guy. And I'm like, Gates? No. Bondi? Sure. Put Bondi in there. She's not going to do anything. And Gates can hit the sidelines because he's a real threat to the status quo. Sharpie Guy. Judge Jeanine Pirro is a natural and even better replacement for Pam Bondo Barbie from Sharpie Guy. We do like Judge Jeanine Pirro too, no doubt. Hey, NY, Larry Gates is a horrible choice. Bondi is a serious lawyer. Moderates and independents won't respect actions from a Matt Gates AG. We need some legitimacy in that position. So now I think you're weighing legitimacy against justice and accountability for the prior cases, right? So does Pam Bondi have legitimacy now, according to MAGA, or has that been pretty much shredded at the moment? Bucky's is Rome says the Trump administration making the Epstein files a central part of the campaign was stupid. How the media and Democrats are going to use this as a wedge issue for sure. Some of them are doing it. Now, a lot of them are not, which I think is an interesting one, right? That's the dog that isn't barking, are the Democrats who are not speaking out about this, but some are. I saw Senator Wyden was talking to Adam Klasfeld about it, saying it's a wedge issue. The Senate Democrats and the House Democrats, especially if they take back the House, are going to investigate and subpoena everyone because they're now convinced Trump is in the files and no one is going to believe whatever comes out after. Stupid decision, especially when there are bigger issues to focus on and fix. Yeah, and if something like that does exist, or like there's a whistleblower, right? This is the real risk on this. Is like, what if there's a whistleblower who just comes out and starts talking about this, or Alan Dershowitz starts speaking, or somebody says, actually, you know what? This is ridiculous. There's a whole trove of files. I'm just going to leak it to the media, whatever. Then it looks like Pam Bondi's covering up for Trump, and that's devastating if that happens. Hopefully it's not true and doesn't, but you understand the risk there. And why? Who intubated Epstein? Not that many medical professionals can perform this procedure. Who did the procedure? They should be deposed. In a hospital, only anesthesiologists, ER docs, and a few critical trained docs actually do this procedure. Very suspicious. Also, why does autocorrect hate Epstein? It's probably programmed by Mossad, probably. G-Gum! Hey, send Robert Barnes into DC. Robert Barnes for AG with a cup of Joe. Looking good, Robert. Woo! And he's off. Amazing. Bucky's is Rome says, one dude, even in death, is able to paralyze the whole political movement. It's almost unbelievable how much power Epstein has, even when he's dead. This is turning into a clown show in the first Trump admin when everything was chaos, which cost the Republicans the House. Yeah, this is pretty bad because now you have a major fissure between the DOJ and the FBI. That seems like it's valid. You know, it's like there's good reporting on it. They can try to say that it didn't happen, but their credibility is on thin ice. Bucky's is Rome. Thank you for that one. Bucky says, Pam did nothing for the first 5 months but go on TV and run her mouth nonstop. She made the Trump administration look like fools. Yeah, she did say a lot of things that we're just like, you don't need to say those things. Like, remember when she came out and was filing charges against Letitia James? We said, what? They were like, it's a civil lawsuit. I'm like, what are you talking about? Hey, this old guy, morning, Rob. It's time for Trump to appoint a special prosecutor to reopen and put the Epstein case to bed once and for all. See, I think if he does that, then Pam has to go. Right? Like, that's overruling Pam. Like, why didn't Pam make that decision? Pam came out, covered up for Epstein, then Trump overrules Pam, then Pam has to go. Trump has a hard decision to make. I've never been impressed with Bondi's public persona. Her dramatic California girl delivery absolutely sucks. California does too. Oh yeah, get out there and enjoy the huge hole in the ground. Definitely. Yeah, there's this giant gaping chasm that's brewing in Magaland, and I'm going to go walk around the giant gaping chasm in Arizona. Yeah, good stuff. Hey, T-Mobile is putting Starlink on their phones now. I heard about that. Yeah, I was looking into that too. And Spud says, Rob, please post some of the train ride to the canyon and check out the Adirondack RR if you ever come east. Your brother would love it. I know I do. We had a great train ride. We had this guy come and play the fiddle, and I have this awesome video of him. Joey made this request for Titanic, and this guy banged out Titanic on this fiddle. It was wild. So I got that. I'll share that for sure. The train was awesome. The train was very fun. Boopsie. The good part of all this is our voices being heard. Tom Blanche saw the need to say that they are united because the rumors about Dan walking out. And if Dan did walk out, it was because he saw our feedback. You're right, Boopsie. X, True Social, Rumble are megaphones we didn't have before and are better than voicemail, email, and postcards because everybody reads it and everybody shares it. It's amazingly powerful. Yeah, and it's real-time, instantaneous feedback. It happens right then and there. It's like Dan comes out to post some stories about how things are going great, and everybody can just jump right into his replies and correct the record on it. S. Quinn, enjoy the rest of the trip to the Grand Canyon. Thank you, S. Quinn. Definitely will. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate that. And Defrauded says, meanwhile, the CCP continues to buy up farmland. And where did Epstein get his money? And who got his remaining $600 million in 2019? Yeah, there were a lot of transactions that are very questionable. Remember, they tried to prosecute Trump and bankrupt him over a misreporting of square footage and getting better interest rates. And they prosecuted him for false business records, 34 felony counts. And they can't find anything like that on these co-conspirators to Jeffrey Epstein. Give me a break. Wow, this is interesting. From American Dreamer, I had not heard this from Robert Barnes. American Dreamer says, Robert Barnes says Susie Wiles is the bad apple. So maybe she's pressuring Dan and Cash to join in on this narrative and just forget it and move on. Maybe she might be the one who's doing that on behalf of Trump, right? Maybe Trump doesn't even know about it. Brian Growman, what's up, Brian? Thank you, Brian. What a nice dono. Very generous of you. Thank you for this. Says, hey, I love your broadcast, by the way. I want to remind you, Epstein was an intel op to get dirt on politicians and bureaucrats. People are mistaken if they think there aren't other intel ops still happening, getting dirt on all the politicians. Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Brian. Brian, and thank you for the very nice donut today. I think that's right. And part of our thesis on the Diddy trial, in fact, was that Diddy was just another honeypot, right? There's a name for this. It's like a honeypot. And you try to get people, ask Eric Swalwell about it. The Chinese did it to him when he made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, that Chinese spy. So it is happening. I think many other countries are doing it. That means our own country is probably doing it in certain regards. Now, when it starts to cross into children and all of that stuff, right, then you're talking about some really monstrous stuff. Like Swalwell's Chinese spy was, I think, overage. But the point is, they get it. There are these operations in place. And I think that Epstein was for politicians, for bureaucrats, for the tech bros, all the people kind of in high society in DC. And then you get a guy like Diddy, who is for another segment of the population, which is media, music, movies, and all those things. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. And this is why people want it to stop. We don't want it to just say, oh, well, it exists. I guess it's just part of running a nation. It's not. CA, what's up? I am greatly disappointed by Trump's decision not to release the Epstein files from CA. He lost my support from CA. It's a big statement, CA. I'm wondering if there's anything he can do to win it back other than releasing the files, or is that going to be what it takes for you to have some trust reestablished? It's a big one. And again, it's, I think, broader than just Epstein because it's symbolic of how future actions will be taken and decided if things follow this same template. It's like, this is a template for the next 3.5 years. Is this the type of template we want to live with or not? What's up? This one from Bruce Rice. Baby, what's up, Bruce Rice? Trump has ended campaigning on climate change, abortion, and immigration soon. Did I mention Iran has zero nuts? TACO is gone. Anything else Trump can do for your generation, everybody? Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, Trump has done a lot, right? We've reversed a lot of the border problems. We have an entire, reversal on like the January 6th stuff. Like think about all the people that were pardoned on that. We've had cancellations of NGOs and USAID money. I mean, there's been a lot of wins. So at the same time, you try to measure all of those up versus this loss. And if you, stack them up on a scale, what goes where and which one wins out? Wes Downer, what's up, says, my wife won't let me get anything Starlink because she's Musk deranged. She's salty lib. Well, how do you get connected without Starlink? Does she like Bezos? He's working on one. Maybe Bezos will have a competing system in 5 years. What's up, Bravo 6? If 47 was in those files, they would have exposed him in 2016 and craftily hidden discovery on the other guilty parties. Yeah, I think there is some truth to that too. Like if Trump was in there and there was any evidence that they could have extracted out of there to go and take out Trump, I have to think they would have done that because they tried everything else. They tried to imprison him. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to shoot him in the head and more. And so if they had something like that, why would they not do that? All right. So my friends, what a beautiful stream it has been. Thank you so much for sending these donos in. Brian says, I'm not saying it's okay for these intel ops to be happening. No doubt. I'm saying that is exactly why the government will never release the Epstein files. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I apologize if I read it like I was implying that you wanted it to be happening. I'm just saying that I think there's, like in the intelligence apparatus, they're just probably a portion of them. And if they're not releasing these files, I think probably part of that equation is it's probably too bad for us to know. And it's just, like a parent keeping bad news away from their kids until they're older or something, right? It's just them justifying their lack of transparency as like a caring parent for, a dumb child or something like that. And we don't appreciate that at all. Like we want transparency, we want accountability, we want to know what's happening so that we can participate in our own self-governance. Because if we are not involved in these decisions and people are making these decisions to operate global PDF file rings around us, that's not the government that we signed up for, right? And it's our government. So, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. So we are going to leave it there. Thanks for joining us and hanging out with us. Rub some dirt on it. Shared this one as we close it out. And is sharing, this looks like a train photo over here from Rub Some Dirt on It. Let me see. What did I do over this one? Another train photo from Rub Some Dirt on It. Looking good. I'm going to post some good stuff from the train. It says, I was part of the train robbery on the Grand Canyon train in 2001. Great times. Yeah, it was very much like this. How fun is that? Thank you for that. Rub some dirt on it. You're amazing. And we had NY says Bongino and Bondi hold position in government of trust. Part of that is that they are able to see things the public cannot. They are not congressmen or senators that need to bend to popular support. We send them there with trust. It should be an American Idol AG position. I trust them if releasing things would be a problem, if that is the case. So in other words, if it was something that was so problematic that, releasing it would damage America, then that would be a problem for the country more so than not releasing the documents. Galen's father, Robert Maxwell, was also nuts, says Joel. Please encourage any traumatized Jews like Maxwell and Soros to get psychological help and follow the Torah. Any traumatized Jews like Maxwell and Soros who lost their families in the Holocaust, get psychological help, courtesy of a suggestion of Defrauded in China. Thank you, Defrauded, for that one. And so, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. James says, I told you I don't trust Pam. Anti-Second Amendment from James Anderson. I think a lot of people are with you on that. And that is, one area where if you don't trust her on that, it starts to spiral out. Then she fails on Epstein. She fails on these other things. And you're like, what are we doing with her actually? Like, really, is she really useful at all? Maybe not. So, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming to the Grand Canyon with us. Here's one more final Grand Canyon shot out the window. We're going to head out there and get some breakfast and have a great day up here. Thanks for hitting the road with us and for being here on this Saturday stream. I hope the rest of your Saturday is amazing and you're out there doing something fun, hopefully getting some vitamin D, hopefully spending time with friends, family, the people that we love. That's what we're doing. I hope you're doing the same. But we'll pause here for the weekend. We're going to see what happens. Maybe we'll hear from Cash. Maybe we'll hear from Dan by the time Monday comes around. And of course, we'll see if Dan comes back into work. But we'll continue to talk about it, my friends. Thanks for hanging. Thanks for engaging in the conversation as we all go through this together. We're going to have a great day out here. I hope that you're doing the same. Pausing for just the weekend. We'll come back here on Monday to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. An amazing weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.